My name is Peter Kageyama, Kageyama. I'm an author for The Love of Cities, www.fortheloveofcities.com. Well, I was invited here by the Community Foundation of Muskegon as part of their 50-year anniversary of celebrating community to talk about this book I've written called For the Love of Cities, which is about the value of the emotional connections and the emotional engagement that we have with our places. This is sort of at the heart of every community, yet it's a relationship that is not often understood, and it's not often sort of dissected and examined. We're highly invested in our relationships with our significant others, our friends, our family, certainly with our work. But behind that, I would have to say that the relationship that we have with our place is really one of those top 3 relationships, yet we don't think of it as a relationship. And part of what I'm trying to do with this book is to get people to realize that they are very much in a relationship and how to make that relationship with their city better. I write about this in the book. The things we tend to hate about cities tend to be big things, big intractable problems like parking and transportation, the education system, bad planning. But the things that we love about cities tend to be very small things. They tend to be these intimate connections that we have with our place. It could be a favorite pocket park. It could be a place where you walk your dog, a favorite view, a restaurant, a row of shops where you always can go and find a great place to sit and have a cup of coffee. Those are the kinds of things that really connect us to a place, and they don't necessarily cost a whole lot of money. And I call them love notes. And just like you have the handwritten note that goes with the actual gift, we all learn from experience that handwritten note is more meaningful and probably more important than the actual gift itself. So cities need to realize that they don't have to spend lots of money to make us happy or to make us feel better about our cities. Sometimes it requires just a little bit of thought, like that handwritten note. And I have some great examples that I talk about in the presentation and in the book of small things that have sort of this exponential effect on places. Places and people need meaning. They need a purpose. And when you can marry people and place and purpose together, you get this very powerful tonic that allows folks to feel like they have a sense of ownership and a sense of responsibility for their communities. And when they do that, there's multiple things that happen. One is that people feel more invested, and they're going to channel some of themselves, their energy, their heart, their emotions into a place. Cities benefit by that because they have these engaged citizens who now want to step up and do sometimes extraordinary things for their places. So what you're trying to find is that perfect mix where the city is open and receptive to people's energies and their excitement without sort of squelching that, because it's easy to hide behind rules and bureaucracies and saying, oh no, you're not allowed to do that. You know, there's official people who are supposed to be doing that. You should not do that. And in this day and age, cities really can't afford to be doing that because we all know the coffers are pretty bare for most cities. And I think they're going to need the enthusiasm and the help, frankly, of these emotionally engaged citizens. And that meaning is an important part of why we choose places. Some places just feel more meaningful. And in this sense, I often say that small cities or smaller cities have an advantage in this. As much as we may love New York or San Francisco and Los Angeles, and they are fabulous cities, you don't necessarily feel like they need you in the same way that maybe a city like Muskegon feels like it needs its talented, engaged citizens. And you feel like you can make a difference in a smaller place. You know, you come here, you open up a shop, you start an art gallery, you open up a new business or something like that, people notice, and you feel like you are now really part of the change that is happening in a place. Go to New York, go to Chicago, those kinds of cities, again, you kind of feel like you may be lost in that mix. So if you're looking for meaning, and many of us are, beyond simply making money and a paycheck, smaller cities definitely have something going for them in terms of finding meaningful places to live. The best examples tend to come from places that are very challenged right now. And in the book, I write a lot about cities in Michigan, and certainly about Detroit, and also about New Orleans. And there's something about places that need the help that sort of encourage people to sort of step up and do sort of extraordinary things. And what I think it really does require is that people just need to see an example of someone else doing something and making a difference. Because most of us, are not necessarily that bold to just jump in. We're not going to be, the first penguin in the water, as it were. You know how penguins will all sort of stand there by the water and they'll sort of look around like, you get in first, you get in first. And then one dives in, and then all of a sudden, many, many more will go in. every community needs that first penguin in the water, the one who says, wait, it's okay, you can do this. And then everybody else can sort of follow suit. So the trick is to find and to celebrate those sort of champions in your community. And I bet if you thought about it, you could identify those folks, the early ones in the water, the ones who were doing things before it was cool to be downtown or before the rebirth of the city started to happen and things like that. The ones who were there really from the beginning. Celebrate those folks and elevate what they do and bring that more to the forefront and recognize how extraordinary that actually is. And you will definitely get more people sort of engaged because, again, we want to chase meaning. We want to feel like what we do matters and we want to have fun maybe while we're doing it. And if you can show some great examples, and I love what your cheese lady has done here in downtown Muskegon. I love what I met Jennifer Cross, who has a shop up there on 3rd Street called Continuity. And she was talking about how she was one of the first ones in that block, and she proudly flies this flag out in front of her thing that just says open. And she started recruiting other people to come into that particular neighborhood and say, hey, open up a shop. So she's trying to get her friends to buy into the vision that she sees for that community. It's people like that that lead the way. And they don't necessarily get celebrated in quite the way that they probably should, because again, they're small operations in the grand scheme of things. It's much easier to focus on the big business, but these people are extraordinary and we need to celebrate them. It's interesting that, 10, 15 years ago, the notion of this whole wellness agenda that people talk about really was not part of the conversation that we were having about cities. Yet clearly cities now recognize that they have a duty and a responsibility, and they play a part in the overall health and wellness of their citizens. Everything from childhood obesity to being able to walk more, to just being outside and having a more healthy sense of community. And that wasn't a role that cities typically played, yet now they're embracing it. And they're doing small things, like embracing, the farmers market that you guys have here, I think is a wonderful example. You bring people together, fresh local foods, celebrating that. You have restaurants up there. I saw Mia's that does the farm to table aspect here in town. It's that connection to health and place and a sense of community that you start seeing all of this stuff kind of come together. And it's powerful because that becomes very authentic. The stuff that you can do here in Muskegon can't be replicated really anywhere else in the world because you have this unique combination of the people and this particular environment and these particular restaurants or these particular events. And that's what people really cherish is like, we don't necessarily want cookie cutter kinds of things. I love Outback Steakhouse. It's great food, but no one ever fell in love with a city because they said, oh, the Outback here is just the best. It's like, no, it has, it's uniform. But you come to a place and you go to a great, local restaurant, you have a unique experience, you have something that forever identifies, that place to you. That's what we really cherish. That's why we travel, and that's what we ultimately love about places. The reasons why we ended up fearing our downtowns is because there was this flight away from them. They become sort of these derelict, items that are only occupied maybe from 9 to 5, and then people will rush to their cars and then flee to the suburbs and whatnot. When places have activity, we feel safe. Jane Jacobs, the great urbanist and the author of Death and Life of Great American Cities, said that the safety lies in the eyes of strangers on the street. So when we feel like there's other activity, we see other people around, so more people moving downtown, more people coming down for the restaurants and the festivals, just things that are happening here, we naturally feel better about our place. So it builds, it's one of those things that, the more you get, the more you get kind of thing. And so I think when cities are now trying to come back, they're having to sort of reverse that tide and say, okay, we've not paid attention to our city centers for the past generation. Now, all of a sudden, we're realizing these are really important. And there's now this corresponding movement back towards city centers. Not everybody's going to want to live back downtown, but more and more people are. But certainly more and more people are wanting to come back downtown for the experiences that they're having there. And that's what's starting to create this new sense of vitality. And once you get that ball rolling just a little bit, it becomes, the momentum, just builds and builds. And pretty soon you could say that, there's some extraordinary things that are happening and just like, wow, I can't believe this is happening that fast. Two things. One is regarding, kids and the education system. Cities have to be for kids as well. And there's this notion that cities are not good for kids, which is why, oftentimes, young professionals who may live in a part of downtown, as soon as they get married and they start having kids, they move to the suburbs and things like that. So there is this corresponding notion that we have to rebuild our cities and our inner city school systems and the infrastructure that supports families and cities, because it should not be exclusive, that you have to move to a different part of your community once you have kids to chase good schools, to chase that sort of quality of life. We need to find a balance. And I think as people move back downtown, you're going to see that the urge to say, look, I don't want to have to leave the great life that I've built here in a more urban environment just because I'm now having kids. It's like, and because let's face it, we all want to have it all, right? And that's a good example. And the other thing is this idea of these community engagements. Flower gardens, these community gardens kind of things that are sort of popping up, lots of vacant places, all over the country, lots of them here in Michigan, of course. And when people are able to say, look, this is going to be an ugly vacant lot if I don't do something, and they come together, and maybe without permission, I think is an interesting notion that not necessarily, they don't necessarily ask for permission first, but they go and they do something together. And when you build something, when you do something as fundamental as till the soil and flowers grow, vegetables grow, there's something really magical about that. There's a process that goes on there. And yes, the vegetables are important, the flowers are pretty, but it's what happens with the people when they come together and they cooperate and they do something together. Magic happens with that. I know your Monet Gardens here has been, for over, almost 10 years now. I was reading about that and I saw them yesterday. I think it's beautiful. And I love the fact that this woman who, said that there was this vacant lot next to her and says, look, we got to do something with this. And she championed that and she made something happen. That's the kind of spirit that you really want to encourage. And again, it goes back to what I said before. Once people see, hey, that worked, they just need that example. I think most of us would like to do the right thing. Most of us would like to be better citizens and more engaged with our cities. We just don't have the tools, and we just are not quite sure how to jump in the game, and we're not sure if it's safe to dance yet. Right now, obviously government's, budgets are stretched very, very thin. So government doesn't have the ability to do the things that they've historically done, build and invest and things like that. So they're basically relying upon the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, the arts and cultural community and things like that. But we all know that they're stretched very thin now as well. So I think the current challenge here is how do we build cities really without money? And I guess the analogy I would use here is that, well, how do, if building great cities and if love required money, then only rich people would fall in love. And we know that's really not the case. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic status is. Love is kind of universal. So how do we, tap into that love in this time when we don't have money? So we're going to have to tap into the love and the creativity and sort of this excitement that people have about, making something happen. So I think part of that, the role for government right now is to, I think, become cheerleaders and champions because they don't have the money to sort of put behind it, and then maybe help get out of the way. Not stand behind formal rules and regulations the way it would be very easy to do, and to become a more permissive society in the sense that, we want this to happen. We want people to be able to do this. We're going to figure out a way to make the rules work and to do it safely, to do it in a productive way. But we're still going to not squelch that enthusiasm that people, have for their places. And I think when that kind of stuff happens, and entrepreneurs are really good at finding this because the root of the word entrepreneur is not necessarily to start a business. It is to notice opportunity. We should all be entrepreneurs in that sense because every day we notice an opportunity. It's capitalizing on that. It's moving that from saying, oh, that'd be interesting. Why doesn't somebody do that? It's like, no, why don't I do that? And we change that orientation. And again, it goes back to the penguins in the water. You start seeing people jump in and you start seeing them have success and them being able to do something, you get more entrepreneurs. And I mean entrepreneurs in the grandest sense, that they're social entrepreneurs, business entrepreneurs, government, not-for-profit entrepreneurs, those kinds of folks. And everybody's noticing opportunity and everybody maybe steps in and does a little bit more and makes the community just a little bit better. I think the goal is that we all want to, find fulfillment. We're all looking for love in that sense. We want it in our personal relationships. We want to have satisfying work. And we want to have places that we emotionally connect with, places that we can love, places that love us back. So part of that is we have to step up, recognize that we're in a relationship, and work on it. Because relationships that we take for granted, the ones that we don't work on, they tend to not be very good. They can easily fall apart. We know that from, I'm sure, all of us from personal experience. We can't take the relationships that we have with our cities for granted. We've got to nurture them. We've got to make them better, because that is at the core of what we're doing. We're making meaning, we're making place, and we're making our future in these cities.